What's up and welcome back to my channel. I want to start this video off by saying happy Black History Month to all my Black viewers. If you're here because you want to see if some of your faves are in here, or if you want to figure out which books you haven't read by Black authors that are not on your shelf yet, then welcome. I'm happy to see you. Also, there might be a lot of books that you've already read or that you know about or already on your TBR, and we can discuss about that in the comments. And for all the non-Black viewers that are watching this video who are trying to expand their TBR and trying to expand their reading habits, I applaud you for being here, and I hope that you take away a couple titles that you wanna try out. I made sure to have a very vast variety of different reads. I have some classics, I have some plays, I have some autobiographies, I have romance, I have thrillers, and they're all, a lot of these are available on audiobooks, on ebook formats. A lot of these you can buy at the library and support the authors directly, which I really highly encourage you to do so. Some are shorter, some are longer. If your attention span is a little affected by TikTok, it's all good. It's all good. I respect it. Yeah. And if you like a long, nice read that you can get cozied with, you can obviously find your pick here as well. There's not that many long ones as well. Like, it's not too bad. Yeah, I hope that I can show you new things today. Like, show you new books that you haven't heard of, but a lot of these are actually like classics in the Black African American literature genre. So you might have heard of them or read them once in your life before, but it's always nice to revisit as well. So anyways, I didn't think this intro would be this long, but let's get into it. I'm gonna start with plays. I have two plays that I want to talk about, which I've mentioned in my last video, which are my favorite books of 2023, but I just wanted to make sure that they were in this particular video as well. And it is August Wilson's The Piano Lesson and A Raisin in the Sun, Lorraine Hansberry. Actually, I don't think that The Piano Lesson was in my last video, but I definitely read it last year and I loved it. I don't know if it made the cut or if I put it in my honorary mentions in the description box, possibly, but whatever it was. I actually kind of suggest that you read them a little bit one after the other if you're interested in plays at all, especially Black plays. They kind of cover similar topics of like trauma and Blackness, how it is to be Black men and women in a segregated, very racist America. They deal with familial disputes and they're so real and raw. The characters are super just intense and vivid. They kind of come off the page. You can tell that they're plays, like they're written as plays, obviously with mainly dialogue, but they're both so beautifully constructed by both authors that they mirror and imagine a family dynamic that is so easily digestible and beautiful to witness on the page. Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun actually made me cry when I read it. It's one of the most beautiful display of love and understanding and caring, and there's such a beautiful character development within the story from all the characters, but definitely one of them, and it really will jump at you what internalized racism and the need to want to be accepted by the majority, which is the white population, how it can damage the Black mind and create more trauma. So I really recommend this one. And The Piano Lesson has a little more of a touch of humor in it. Obviously, A Raisin in the Sun also does, but I really like the humoristic tone in it. It's super short, easy read. It's based in Mississippi. There's definitely more discussion about money and the economy and what I don't want to spoil it, so it's kind of hard to talk about it, but to what extent do we commemorate the ones we love, and to what extent do we save ourselves from our current dilemmas and hardships, if that makes sense. Anyways, both of these are amazing. Next two books are actually by the same author, and I've had the pleasure to read Beloved by Toni Morrison and Jazz by Toni Morrison. Jazz I actually just read last week, and I absolutely loved it. I love both of these novels. They're actually breathtaking. There's nothing that I can say about Toni Morrison that hasn't already been said. She's an incredible writer. She has completely understood how to portray Black mind and Black people on the page, and the realities of post-slavery trauma and how it affects the Black brain. And she has such a beautiful way of depicting love and relationship, familial dynamics in her books. Jazz is a little bit more based on music and the tradition of jazz and blues in the Black tradition, while As Beloved is more of an exploration of post-slavery trauma on the Black mind, has more of a focus on love and family as well. Both of these are absolutely amazing. I definitely recommend getting into Toni Morrison. I want to read more of her work this year. Another book that I've already talked about briefly in my last video, but need to mention, Passing by Nella Larsen. This is a book about two Black women that are light-skinned and have a certain proximity to whiteness, but one of them decides to pass as white. Meanwhile, the other one decides to fully embrace her Blackness. And they meet and they obviously disagree on both of their ways of living, or don't really understand and try to understand. It's beautiful. It ends really tragically. Super short read, but definitely one that I think is worth the pickup. I know it has a Netflix adaptation. I have not seen it. I do want to see it, but this is one of those that like you could talk about endlessly. There's so many aspects to this, so many layers, and I feel like it can be talked about for decades to come. Keep in mind, this was like published around 1920s, and I've read it in 2023, last year, and I think it's still relevant to today's discussions of colorism and internalized racism and racism within society. Why is it that somebody that's Black but white passing would choose to not fully acknowledge their Black side and like would rather appeal to the white majority? Next two books I read, I actually read this week, which is crazy, but I need to add this to this recommendation list. The first one is Audre Lorde's The Cancer Journals. I actually did a oral presentation on this one. It is a stunning compilation of Audre Lorde's journals that she wrote while she was diagnosed with breast cancer and she had to undergo a mastectomy. It gets super real. It's very raw. It's very vulnerable. Her prose, her writing is absolutely stunning. Even in her journals, she's poetic and lyrical. This is actually, for me, the depiction of Black female rage. And if you want to read something that's short but poignant and something that will like last with you for a long time and that you're going to want to reread and re-explore and reimagine and know more about, this is such a great work to read. She is very vocal about her opinion in this one. So if you feel like, oh, I like something that's a little bit more nuanced, or like that she sees both sides, like this is not what this is. Lorde is very, this is what I think and here's what I think, why I think it. So definitely if you don't like that radical activist voice, you're not gonna like this, but I absolutely loved it. Like 5 stars. It's actually my first 5-star of 2024. And I definitely want to read more of Audre Lorde's work now. So yeah, I have cat hair on my lips. Okay. Next book I read is Their Eyes Were Watching God, Zora Neale Hurston. This was so good. I actually didn't expect for me to like it as much as I did. I also did an oral presentation and like a work on this, and I really went from like the critical lens. Like the reception of Their Eyes Were Watching God was really poor at the time. It was published around 1930s. Around that time, a lot of Harlem Renaissance African-American writers criticized Hurston for her work, especially Richard Wright, who was completely against her portrayal of Black people. She utilizes a lot of AAVE and she writes in AAVE. Like she doesn't translate into the correct or proper English, and it's kind of ahead of its time in a sense for a Black woman at the time to be publishing a book that is so unapologetically Black and use AAVE and not correct herself to mold into this, to fit into the mold of like American writers of the time. That's that makes her a pioneer in her genre. Explores like female sexuality, Black female sexuality, marriage and violence. It's there's definitely a lot of domestic violence. So if that's triggering for you, but definitely check the trigger warnings. Go in it with caution. It's explored very raw, like there's no filter. There are scenes that are harder to read. There are things that are just frustrating. I feel like through the main character, Jeannie, there's also like an exploration of female rage and like Black female rage and how it feels to just be diminished by your husband and by men in society. Anyways, I could go on and on about this. Obviously, I'm on a high from this because I just read it like 2-3 days ago. And I really think it's like brilliant. It's really, really ahead of its time. And it's one of those books that I think everybody should read. And it's one of those books that I think I'll be reading forever and ever and ever and reread. Because there's gonna be different facets to explore about this forever. So still super relevant in my opinion. And yeah. Okay, that was my classics / plays categories. Now I'm gonna go into autobiographies. I am not gonna go into detail about these because an autobiography is just somebody talking about their own personal experiences and lives. These are very special to me, and all of these that I'm gonna mention are books that I've really, really enjoyed because the author has been able to be raw and vulnerable and explore the realities of being Black within their field. Most of these people are actually like artists, so actors and actresses, and has been in places and positions of power, and they explore what it's like to be Black in those positions. And I think those are really brilliant autobiographies to read. And yeah, first one is Viola Davis's Finding Me. This has made my favorite books of 2022, I think, like 2 years ago. It's one I think about like more often than I like to admit. It's one that just really sticks with you. I think her voice is super, super vivid in this. I don't know how to explain it. I read it physically. I know there's an audiobook and everybody says it's amazing. So if you can pick it up, it's read by the author. But it's definitely one of the most heartbreaking autobiography that I've read. I said I wasn't gonna go into details, but here I am going into details. Viola Davis is just such an incredible actress, but she's also an incredible writer, and her voice in this is just everything. I think if I could give her Nobel Prize of Literature just based off of this, I would. And that's how I feel about Finding Me. Like, I feel very strongly. And the back is a baby picture of her, and she's so cute. Next book is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I feel like you can't make an autobiography section of Black writers without mentioning Becoming. It's a classic, a little bit longer, a little bit thicker. I love the audiobook of this. She talks about how it is to be a Black woman in politics, because she was kind of forced into politics because of Barack's position. So she became first lady without ever really wanting to. And she talks about that tension between that, like having your husband follow his dream and being proud of him, but also being in a position where you're like, well, I didn't want it. This is not my dream. But also being able to make a change the way that she has, and to be the first Black lady, the first Black first lady. That was a mouthful. But she talks about that, and she's so beautiful and eloquent in the way she speaks. And she talks about her childhood and her parents and her family, and it's very, very beautiful book. And here I am going into details again, but yeah. Next book is something I read semi-recently. I don't know. It's Will Smith's Will, and it's his autobiography. I feel like there's a lot of controversy around Will Smith right now. It's like, how can you support him? How can you like him? But I have a lot to say about the Chris Rock situation, and I just don't feel like it needed to be that dramatically punished. And I don't feel like he would have been if he wasn't Will Smith, if that makes sense. Anyways, he talks about his career, his youth, how he grew up, his father, his relationship with his father, which is there's a lot of tension there, and that kind of built him up to be the man that he is today. He talks about Jada, he talks about his kids, he talks about how it was like for him to have his first child, Trey, and you know, Willow and Jaden after. And I think it's really, really nice. I read it on audiobook, and I really urge you to listen to the audiobook because he raps in certain parts. He has music playing in certain parts. There's instruments, there's vocals, there's a lot of acting. He's an actor, obviously. So his whole reading of his autobiography is so dynamic and fun. I feel like I flew through it like in a couple of days. It's long, but it's like you were just fully immersed in the world of Will Smith when you read Will. So highly recommend. Okay, next section is for my fiction girlies. I'm gonna talk about one mystery, thriller-ish, and a bunch of romance. So I'm gonna start with the mystery thriller book, just get it out the way because I only have one. And this one is Ace of Spades by Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé. This is the paperback version from the UK. I know there's like a stunning like hardcover version. That cover is like so pretty, but I'm really just a paperback girl. I really don't like hardcovers that much, so I went for this version. But this is, everybody describes this as Get Out meets Gossip Girl. It's based in this private academy where there's mostly the student body is mainly white people, but there's a select few black people. They usually are just okay with whatever, we're just a minority in this school, I guess. And then one of them one day decides to really question it and be like, why are we the only few black people in here? Like what is it about us exactly? And they go to uncover that and unfold that. And I read this a while ago, so it's not super fresh in my memory, but I remember reading it and being like gagged. I was like, what? And I remember when it first came out, I felt like a lot of people were buzzing about it and talking about it, and then it came out and people read it and the hype kind of died down, but I don't feel like it's warranted. I feel like it's one of those books that we need to talk about a little bit more. The writing is really good. It's very fast paced. So you will go through it in a couple of days for sure. It keeps you on your toes. You want to find out what's next. Like it's really that part of like what's going on. And I just love the academic setting. This is definitely like a teen book, but something that I recommend for young adults as well, and even adults, to really just see it and just read it. Make sure that when you're reading it from a teen perspective, and to put your feet and your shoes and yourself into what it's like to be a teen and to discover all of these truths for the first time. So yeah, now I have my romances. I'm gonna go in with the tried and true, the trilogy of all trilogies, which is the Brown Sister trilogy by Chloe Brown. Brown Sister trilogy by Talia Hibbert. I almost said Chloe Brown, but that's the girl in the first book. This trilogy lives in my heart, lives in my head forever and ever. It's one of the best romance trilogies. I know it's like the typical recommendation that people will say for like good black romance books, but it's because they're just essentially so good. They are like a series kind of. They follow each other. You can read them in order, but you can definitely pick them up in whatever order you want and still like really enjoy them. They kind of stand on their own, but it's nice to see cameos of the sisters like throughout the books, and they definitely get steamy. I would say they're like adult romance books. They all follow their own like kind of quirky characters and personalities. One thing I love about this series is the fact that they're all so individual. The sisters are not like each other at all, but they do love each other and hold each other very close, but they stand in their individualities. Yeah, I love them. So first one, if you didn't know, is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. My second one is Take a Hint, Dani Brown, which is my personal favorite in the trilogy. And At Your Age, Eve Brown. I definitely need to get my hands on more Talia Hibbert because she has not only written this trilogy, she has plenty other books. She has a big backlist. So definitely, if you read this, don't be like me and actually explore more of her backlist. I just am all over the place with my reading. And next two books are like the hit girl, the hot girls, the new hot girl standalones in like the black romance book realm of Instagram, book talk, YouTube, everything, but they're very warranted. So I have Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan and 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Before I Let Go is just a second chance marriage renewal romance. I feel like this is the one, like these two actually, but like just go into them blind. Like don't even read the back, just buy this book or get it on your Kindle, figure out a way to get it and just read it. Like It is so magical. Kennedy Ryan is such a good writer. Matter of fact, I don't have her other book, but I do recommend Long Shot by her. That's another book that I feel like you should go into it semi-blind, read the trigger warnings for that one, but just try not to know too much about it. It's so good. Long Shot is so good. I need to get a physical copy of that. But before I let go, second chance romance and marriage renewal and all that, and like you really explore grief and hurt and family dynamics and how it can impact the person and the relationship and how to get back from that and step to another level of your relationship together. And it's just really beautiful. I really like this one. Obviously, 7 Days in June is literally my favorite romance novel of all time. I will scream it from the top of my lungs. Anytime anybody recommends me a romance book, I always go for 7 Days in June first. It's also a second chance romance. I favor this one a little bit more. It's about two writers that got together when they were young, and then fast forward a couple years later, they are no longer together. They're actually estranged, and then they meet again, and then they realize that, you know, the love that they had for each other was never really gone, and they kind of work with that and rekindle that in a way, and it's just so good. And I don't know, this is the book that made me realize that I really love a second chance romance. I love when a romance doesn't just start right away. Like, I love when it takes time, and 7 Days in June is just that. It's just that girl. Writing is amazing, characterization is amazing, plot, storyline, everything is that girl. She's that girl.
I'm that girl. It's just that I'm that girl.
I think I forgot to mention in autobiographies, Kerry Washington's Thicker Than Water. I still don't have a physical copy because I read an audiobook, but that's a banger and that should be added to your list. That's it. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in any of them, or if you're adding them to your TBR, or anything in the comment. If you've made it this far, actually, can you let me know by putting a black heart emoji in your comment? That would make me very happy, just to know if people actually listen to me ramble for 30 minutes. And yeah, so if you like this, make sure you leave me a thumbs up, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. It's gonna be in the description box, and I'll see you guys in my next video.